The day I learned my parents' company was failing, I was sitting in my private office on the 47th floor of Manhattan's most prestigious financial district, reviewing acquisition reports. I had built my empire quietly, carefully, always staying in the shadows. No one knew that Emma Davidson, the supposed failure of the Davidson family, owned one of the largest private banking institutions in New York. My phone buzzed. A message from my assistant. Your brother Marcus is all over the financial news. Davidson Corp stocks down 60% in one day. I allowed myself a small smile, remembering the last time I saw my family 5 years ago. The scene played out in my mind as clearly as if it had happened yesterday. You're nothing but a disappointment, my father had thundered across the massive dining table of our family estate. Look at your brother, already VP of Operations at 28. And you, wasting your time with these ridiculous small business ventures. My mother sat silently, as always, her perfectly manicured hands folded in her lap. She never defended me, never stood up against my father's tirades. Marcus, my beloved older brother and the family's golden child, smirked from his place at my father's right hand. Face it, Emma, he drawled, swirling his expensive whiskey. You're not cut out for the Davidson legacy. Why don't you just accept that junior accounting position I offered you? At least then you'd be somewhat useful to the family. I remember standing up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I think I'll pass, I said quietly. In fact, I quit. Consider this my resignation from trying to meet your impossible standards. If you walk out that door, my father's voice dropped dangerously low. Don't expect anything from this family. No connections, no money, no inheritance. Nothing. I paused at the doorway, looking back one last time. That's fine. I never wanted your money anyway. What they didn't know then, what they still didn't know, was that I had already begun building something of my own. Years of being underestimated had taught me the value of working in silence. While Marcus was busy flaunting his corporate success and my parents were proudly showcasing their hair, I was quietly acquiring failing banks and turning them around. It started with a small regional bank in Connecticut, bought for pennies on the dollar during the financial crisis. I restructured it, modernized operations, and used the profits to acquire more struggling financial institutions. Each acquisition was done through layers of shell companies and holding corporations. The banking world knew that someone was systematically building a financial empire, but no one knew it was the worthless Emma Davidson. Now 5 years later, I controlled over $50 billion in assets through my banking network. And as fate would have it, Davidson Corp had loans with several of my banks, loans that were about to come due. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Davidson Corp seeks emergency refinancing amid liquidity crisis. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my legal team. It was time to consolidate all of Davidson Corp's loans under my primary holding company. My father and brother were about to learn that their arrogance had a price. Within hours, my team had confirmed what I already suspected. Marcus had overextended the company, taking on massive debt to fund ambitious expansions. He had believed, like my father always did, that the Davidson name was too big to fail. But markets don't care about family names, and creditors don't accept arrogance as collateral. Ms. Davidson, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your brother is trying to schedule an emergency meeting with the bank's executives. He doesn't know you own it, of course. Should I have him directed to the usual channels? I thought for a moment. No, Sarah. Set up the meeting for tomorrow morning. But don't tell them who they're meeting with. That evening, I stood in front of my penthouse windows, watching the city lights flicker to life. My phone had been buzzing constantly with news alerts about Davidson Corp's impending collapse. The company my grandfather had built, that my father had grown, and that my brother had nearly destroyed, was now teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my safe, pulling out an old photograph. It showed a much younger version of my father standing with my grandfather outside the original Davidson Corp building. I was there too, barely visible at the edge of the frame, always an afterthought. Investment banking is no place for a girl, my father used to say whenever I showed interest in the family business. You'll just have to marry well and let your brother handle the important things. Those words had fueled me through countless late nights and challenging deals. Every time someone underestimated me, every time a male colleague talked over me in meetings, I remembered my father's dismissal and worked harder. My assistant had compiled a detailed report on Davidson Corp's current situation. The company needed to refinance nearly $2 billion in loans within the next 30 days. Without an extension or new financing, they would default on their obligations. Their stock price had plummeted so far that raising capital through equity was virtually impossible. I spent hours reviewing their financials, not because I needed to. I already knew exactly what I was going to do, but because I wanted to understand every detail of how Marcus had driven our family's legacy into the ground. His mistakes were painfully obvious. Overambitious acquisitions, excessive leverage, and a complete disregard for risk management. Around midnight, my private line rang, the number only a handful of people had. It was Janet Chen, my oldest friend, and the only person who knew the full truth about my success. "I just saw the news about Davidson Corp," she said without preamble. "Are you going to do it? Reveal yourself." I swirled the wine in my glass, watching it catch the city lights. "They need to learn that actions have consequences, Janet. That treating people as worthless because they don't fit your narrow definition of success isn't just cruel, it's stupid. And you're sure you want to handle this personally? You could send any of your executives." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "No, this needs to be me. They spent years telling me I wasn't good enough, that I'd never understand business the way Marcus did. Tomorrow, they'll learn just how wrong they were." After hanging up, I went into my home office and opened my laptop one last time. With a few keystrokes, I accessed the secure system that connected all my banks. By morning, every Davidson Corp loan would be under my direct control. I picked up the photo again, studying my father's proud stance, my brother's entitled smile. Tomorrow, those expressions would be replaced by something very different. Tomorrow, they would learn that the daughter they had dismissed, the sister they had mocked, now held the fate of their precious company in her hands. As I finally went to bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Don't bother coming to Dad's birthday next week. Family only. Successful family." I didn't reply. Tomorrow, success would be redefined for the Davidson family, and I would be the one doing the redefining. The morning dawned clear and bright. A perfect New York autumn day. I dressed carefully in a tailored black suit that cost more than Marcus's first car, though he'd never know that. Every detail mattered today. I wanted them to see not just who I'd become, but who I'd always been, beneath their prejudices and dismissals. My car was waiting outside my building, my driver holding the door with a knowing smile. "The Davidson Corp building, Miss Davidson?" "Yes, James. It's time for a family reunion." The Davidson Corp headquarters hadn't changed much in 5 years. The same imposing glass and steel structure, the same giant logo in the lobby, The same security guards who didn't give me a second glance as I walked in with my team of executives. We were directed to the main conference room on the 50th floor. Through the glass walls, I could see my father and brother already waiting, along with their army of lawyers and financial advisors. They looked tired, defeated, but still arrogant. "Ms. Davidson," my assistant whispered, "they've prepared quite a presentation. Apparently, they think they can convince us to extend their loans without any major restructuring." I smiled slightly. "Let them present. It'll make what comes next even more interesting." We entered the conference room precisely at 9 a.m. Marcus stood up, his designer suit looking slightly rumpled, dark circles under his eyes, betraying his stress. "Welcome. We're so grateful you could." His voice trailed off as he finally looked at me properly. For a moment, confusion crossed his face, then recognition, followed by absolute shock. My father, who had been reviewing some papers, looked up at Marcus's sudden silence. The color drained from his face as he saw me standing at the head of the table. "Emma," he stammered, "what are you doing here?" "This is a private meeting." I set my briefcase down calmly, gesturing for my team to take their seats. "Actually, Father, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I own Atlantic Crown Banking Group." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus sank back into his chair, his mouth hanging open. My father's face had turned from pale to red. "That's impossible," he finally managed. "Atlantic Crown is a multi-billion-dollar institution. You couldn't possibly." "Couldn't possibly what, Father? Build something successful? Understand high finance? Be more than just your disappointing daughter?" I nodded to my CFO, who began distributing documents to everyone in the room. "Let me make this very clear. Through Atlantic Crown and its subsidiaries, I control every major loan Davidson Corp currently has outstanding. That's $2.1 billion in total debt, all of which comes due in the next 30 days. Marcus was frantically flipping through the papers, his hands shaking. "This can't be legal. You can't just what, Marcus? Make sound business decisions? Isn't that what you've been doing?" I pulled up the company's financials on the conference room screen. "Let's talk about your sound business decisions. Like the Fisher acquisition that cost 3 times its actual value. Or the Asian expansion that's bleeding money every quarter. Or my personal favorite, the executive compensation packages you approved while the company was taking on massive debt." My father stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. "If you think you can come in here and threaten us." "Sit down, Father," I said quietly, but with enough authority that he actually did. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply stating facts. Davidson Corp is technically insolvent. Without an immediate capital injection and loan restructuring, you'll be in default by the end of the month. Your stock price has dropped so low that raising equity is impossible. In short, you need my help." Marcus had finally found his voice again. "Your help? You've probably been planning this for years, waiting for your chance at revenge." I laughed, the sound echoing in the tense room. "Revenge? Oh, Marcus, if I wanted revenge, I'd simply decline to refinance your loans. Davidson Corp would collapse, and you'd both lose everything. But that's not why I'm here." I pulled out another set of documents, the restructuring proposal my team had prepared. "I'm here because despite everything, this company still means something to me. Not because of you two, but because of Grandfather. He built something real here, something valuable, before you both got so caught up in your own egos that you forgot what really matters in business." My father reached for the proposal with trembling hands. As he read, his face went through a range of emotions: anger, disbelief, and finally, something close to fear. "You want control of the company," he said quietly. "No, Father. I want to save the company. From you." I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "The restructuring terms are simple. You and Marcus will step down from all executive positions. A new board will be appointed, and the company will be run by qualified professionals, not entitled family members who think the Davidson name makes them infallible." Marcus jumped up. "You can't do this. Dad, tell her she can't do this." I turned back to face them. "Actually, I can, and I will. You have 24 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, I'll call the loans due immediately. Your choice." One of their lawyers cleared his throat. "Ms. Davidson, while you may control the debt, there are shareholders to consider." "You mean the shareholders who've watched their investment lose 60% of its value under current management? I'm sure they'll be thrilled to hear about a restructuring plan that might actually save their money." My father was still staring at the proposal, his hands shaking slightly. "All these years, while we thought you were nothing, you were building this." "Yes," I said simply. "Every time you told me I was worthless, every time you dismissed my ideas, every time you chose Marcus over me, I was building something you couldn't see, couldn't control, and couldn't take credit for." I nodded to my team, and they began packing up their materials. 24 hours, gentlemen. I suggest you use them wisely." As we prepared to leave, Marcus made one last desperate attempt. "You'll regret this, Emma. Family is supposed to help each other, not destroy each other." I paused at the door, looking back at him. "Funny, I don't remember you saying anything about family when you were calling me worthless. When you were offering me junior positions out of pity. When you were texting me just last night to tell me I wasn't welcome at Father's birthday party. Then I delivered the final blow. But you're right about one thing, Marcus. Families should help each other. That's exactly what I'm doing. Helping you face the consequences of your actions before you destroy everything Grandfather built." The last thing I saw as I walked out was my father's face, finally showing something I'd never seen before: respect mixed with fear. He had just realized that his biggest mistake wasn't in how he'd run the company. It was in how he'd underestimated his daughter. My phone buzzed as I stepped into the elevator. A message from Janet. "How did it go?" I smiled, thinking of Marcus's shocked face and my father's trembling hands. "Better than I ever imagined. They have 24 hours to accept reality. And if they don't, then they'll learn that the daughter they called worthless now has the power to make their empire disappear with a single signature." The elevator doors closed, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. 5 years of working in silence, of building my power in shadows, had led to this moment. Tomorrow, one way or another, everything would change for the Davidson family, and I would be the one making those changes. The 24 hours I had given my family ticked by slowly. I spent the evening in my office, watching the city lights flicker while news channels endlessly discussed Davidson Corp's uncertain future. The company's stock had dropped another 15% after rumors spread about the failed refinancing meeting. At midnight, my phone rang. It was my mother, calling for the first time in 5 years. "Emma," her voice sounded tired, older. "What are you doing to this family?" I leaned back in my chair, remembering all the times she had stayed silent during my father's tirades. "I'm not doing anything to the family, Mother. I'm trying to save the company." "By destroying your father? Your brother? Is that what you want?" "No, I replied calmly. What I want is for them to face reality. The company is failing because of their arrogance, not because of me. She was quiet for a moment. You've changed, Emma. No, Mother. I've always been this person. You just never bothered to see it. After she hung up, I received a series of increasingly desperate texts from Marcus. 10:45 p.m. This is cruel, even for you. 11:30 p.m. Dad's having chest pains. I hope you're happy. 12:15 a.m. We can work something out. Just give me a chance to fix this. 1:20 a.m. Please, Emma, don't destroy everything we've built. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I reviewed the latest reports from my team. Davidson Corp's financial situation was even worse than we'd initially thought. Marcus hadn't just made bad decisions, he'd been hiding losses, manipulating reports, and deceiving the board for months. At 8 a.m. sharp, my phone rang again. It was my father. We'll sign, he said without preamble, his voice rough. But I want to meet with you first. Alone. I agreed to see him at my office. An hour later, he stepped out of the elevator, looking smaller somehow, less imposing than I remembered. His eyes widened as he took in the spectacular view from my corner office, the elegant furnishings, the clear signs of success he had never thought I could achieve. Quite a place you've built for yourself, he said, standing awkwardly by my desk. Please, sit down. I gestured to a chair. Would you like some coffee? He shook his head, lowering himself into the chair. How long have you been planning this? I haven't been planning anything, Father. I built my business separately from you, independently of you. The fact that I now control Davidson Corp's debt is simply business circumstances. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. You really own all of this? Atlantic Crown, the other banks, everything? Yes, every dollar, every acquisition, every success. I built it all myself. Without the Davidson name, without your connections, without any help from the family that thought I was worthless. For the first time in my life, I saw something break in my father's expression. I was wrong about you, Emma. I was wrong about so many things. Yes, you were, I agreed. But this isn't about proving you wrong. This is about saving grandfather's legacy before you and Marcus destroy it completely. I pulled out the final version of the restructuring agreement. The terms haven't changed. You and Marcus step down. A new board takes control. The company gets restructured under professional management. He stared at the document for a long moment. And what happens to us? You'll retain your shares, though they'll be diluted by the new equity issuance. You'll have no management role, but you'll keep your board seat as chairman emeritus. Marcus will be offered a position in business development, not running it, just working in it, like he should have been doing all along. My father picked up the agreement, reading through it carefully. This is actually quite fair, more than fair, considering what you could do to us. I'm not interested in revenge, Father. I'm interested in good business, and good business means saving Davidson Corp, not destroying it. He signed the document slowly, his hand trembling slightly. As he set down the pen, he looked up at me with tears in his eyes, something I had never seen before. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quietly, but I want you to know that I am proud of you. Not because of all this, he gestured at my office, but because you became something I never could be, a truly good business person. I felt my throat tighten but kept my voice steady. Thank you. But I didn't do this for your pride or approval. I did it for myself and for grandfather's legacy. After he left, I sat in silence for a long moment, letting the weight of everything sink in. Then I made the calls that would set everything in motion. Lawyers, PR teams, the board of directors. By evening, the news was public. Davidson Corp announces major restructuring under new management. The stock price began to stabilize as the market digested the information about the refinancing deal and the leadership changes. Marcus didn't take it well. He burst into my office unannounced, his face red with anger. "Happy now," he shouted. "You've won. You've taken everything." I looked at him calmly. "Sit down, Marcus." "I won't." "Sit down." Something in my voice made him comply. I pulled out a folder and handed it to him. "This is your new contract. Business Development Associate, focusing on client relationships, something you're actually good at when you're not trying to prove how powerful you are. The salary is fair, the expectations are clear, and for once in your life, you'll have to earn your position." He flipped through the contract, his anger slowly fading into confusion. "Why? Why aren't you destroying me completely? You could. Because you're still my brother, Marcus. And because somewhere under all that entitlement is someone who could be good at this business if he actually tried. Consider this your second chance, your only chance." The next few months were a whirlwind of changes. The new management team restructured Davidson Corp's operations, cut unnecessary expenses, and refocused the business on its core strengths. The stock price began to recover as investor confidence returned. My father, true to his word, stepped back into a ceremonial role. He spent more time with my mother, traveling and finally enjoying the wealth he had spent his life chasing. Sometimes he would send me articles about Atlantic Crown's success or notes about Davidson Corp's recovery. Marcus struggled at first with his reduced role, but gradually something changed in him. Without the pressure of running everything, he actually began to learn the business properly. His client relationships improved, and he started contributing positively to the company's growth. 1 year after the takeover, I sat in my office reviewing the latest quarterly reports. Davidson Corp's stock had recovered to its highest level in 5 years. Atlantic Crown was thriving, and my banking empire continued to grow. A knock at my door interrupted my work. It was Janet, carrying a bottle of champagne. "Time to celebrate," she asked, holding up the bottle. I smiled, thinking about how far I had come from that night 5 years ago when I walked away from my family. Actually, yes, but not because of the company's success. "Oh, then what are we celebrating?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city I had conquered. "We're celebrating the fact that sometimes the people who call you worthless are the ones who make you realize just how much you're worth." Janet poured 2 glasses and handed me one. "To proving them wrong." I shook my head. "No, to proving myself right." Later that evening, I received a text from Marcus. "Thank you for giving me a chance to learn who I really am, not who Dad wanted me to be." I smiled and typed back, "That's what family is supposed to do. Help each other become better, not tear each other down." My phone buzzed again, a news alert about Atlantic Crown's latest acquisition. The photo showed me standing with my executive team, confident and powerful. Below it was a quote, "Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." I saved the article, thinking I might frame it alongside that old family photo, a reminder that sometimes being called worthless is just the beginning of discovering your true worth. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find a small package on my desk. Inside was my grandfather's old pocket watch and a note from my father. "You were right. about everything. This belonged to the last person who truly understood what building something meaningful means. It should be yours now. With pride and regret, Dad. I held the watch, feeling its weight in my hands. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was an acknowledgement. And sometimes, that's worth more than all the apologies in the world. Looking out over the city, I thought about legacy, not just the family's but my own. I had built something larger than revenge, something more meaningful than proving my worth to people who should have seen it all along. I had built a future where being underestimated would never again mean being powerless. And that was worth everything.